One of the things I wanted you to understand after talking with the therapist is that we get this misconception in our mind that once we turn 18, things change dramatically, and things will get much better, and things will go this way, and things will go that way, okay? And that everything that we dealt with as a kid will disappear, all right? For some people, that might be true, but for me, it was not. Even though I had my champions, which was Uncle Bill, Brenda, and Mr. Brown was my champions in high school, and I had my haters, which was Jay, and it was Louie, and it was that individual's mom that was there, okay? I realized that once I turned 18, I started to work a job and do everything like that. Not all of my haters went away. But here's a good thing that happened to me. Neither did some champions. What happened was the haters just changed. They were just different people. They became adult people that tried to destroy me and tried to bring me down and tried to hurt my feelings and stand in the way of what I felt like I needed to do. But as that happened, and I'm going to spend half of our time today to talk about the people that were in my adult life, okay, that purposely went out to destroy me. They did not want me to be successful. They wanted me to fail. And I'm going to talk about how I believe that God put people around me, okay, that was the champions to cancel out the haters. Now let me say this. I'm 58 years old, all right? Nope, 58. All right? I'm 58, and I'm in a position where now I can look back in my life and say, wow, when this stuff was going on, it didn't make much sense in my life. But now that I look back of where I'm at today, I realize that it all had a plan. There was a purpose in it in my life. And so I thought last week was going to be difficult. This week is extremely difficult for me because what I'm doing right now is I'm sharing with you some of my weaknesses that I have as an adult person. Some of the problems that I had as an adult person and how it's affected me, positive and negative. And so the first half of this is kind of difficult. In fact, I was trying to just move on and go in a different direction, and everybody that I talked to about what we need to do here, they all encouraged me that I needed to share that just because I became an adult, began to move out on my own, didn't mean that everything became all nice and fancy for me. But there were some very difficult times because of the haters that were in my life. So let me talk about first when I first got a job. I was 18 and I'd been looking for a job. This was during the time that the economy was really, really bad and no one could find a job. And I was living on my own and I had to move out of the place that I was living with because I didn't have any cash to pay for the rent. So for about 2 weeks, I was living in my car. And I had $10 left in my pocket and I had no job, no place to go, nothing, and I was in Cleveland, Ohio, a city that I really didn't know much about. And I heard that there had been a couple places that were in Cleveland that would have maybe be hiring. And so I remember in 1 week realizing that I had $10 and that I was going to be homeless and no money to eat in a matter of a couple days, all right, if I didn't find a job. And so I heard through a rumor bin of someone had heard that this company might be hiring, but this was after I spent a whole week and I put in, for those that have been looking for a job, I put in 167 applications in 1 week. And I was turned down 167 times. And I went to McDonald's thinking for sure I would get hired at McDonald's. And so I talked to the manager and he says, you come back tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And we will interview you, and if it's a good interview, I'll hire on the spot. And I thought to myself, well, if I get hired at McDonald's, at least I'll be able to eat. I can still sleep in my car, but I'll be able to eat. And on that particular night, there was a snowstorm that hit Cleveland, Ohio, and I got stuck in a snowdrift on my way to the interview. And I missed the interview, and I was 40 minutes late for the interview, and the manager said, we're not going to hire you because you can't even show up on time for the interview. And I remember being so discouraged. I remember just screaming at God, and I did. I screamed at him. I put my fist in the air, and I screamed, and I said, what is it? Do you want me to just starve? I was going to work at McDonald's. I can't even work at McDonald's. And at that time, there was no cell phones or nothing like that. They had those old pay phones, okay, that you had to stop somewhere and put a dime into it. And And so I stopped and I dialed a number of a person that I knew in Cleveland. He goes, go check this place out. I heard they might be hiring. And the place was called Murphy Phoenix Company. I'm spending a lot of time, but I want to put this in order for you. Keep in mind, I had $10 left in my pocket. I had nowhere to live, and I had just got rejected from McDonald's. I had every reason to be discouraged. And by the way, McDonald's paid, I think, $1.90 an hour. Okay? $1.90 is what they paid an hour. That was big money back then for McDonald's. All right? So I went to this place. I knocked. I went up to the place where I went, and this guy by the name of Mr. Moss. Everybody say Mr. Moss. Mr. Moss opened the window, and I said, hey, I'm looking for a job. Are you hiring? And he said, no, we're taking applications. And I said, I'm not interested in anybody. I said, I've put in 160 plus applications. I'm really not interested in applications. Are you hiring? And he goes, yeah, we're hiring. So I filled the application out. I turned it in. He says, you have a number that we can reach you at. And I had jotted down a number of a pay phone that was about 5 miles away from where this place was. And I said, this is my phone number because I didn't want him to know that I was homeless. I said, you can reach me at this number, but I'm only going to be there for a few minutes this morning. He said, we'll call you by noon. And so I went and I sat by that paid telephone. I pulled my car up to it and I sat by it. And everybody that kept coming to try to do it, I was like, I'm expecting to call. You can't use this phone. Go somewhere else. It was like a movie kind of thing that happened. I just kept on saying, no. And then it rang a couple times. It was the wrong number with somebody. I don't know what it was. And I'd hang up, get frustrated. So at 3 o'clock, no call from Mr. Moss. Now, if you notice, I put him on the champion side. And so I picked up the phone and I called the place back and I said, you said, Mr. Moss, you said you were going to call me. They didn't call you? I said, no. He goes, well, he says, if you can get to downtown Cleveland before 4:30, sign up with the Union Hall. He said, you can start tomorrow. I didn't know where the Union Hall was. I didn't even know what a union was at that time. So I found a way. I got to the Union Hall 5 minutes before they closed, signed up on it, and I started to work. And Mr. Moss, for years that I worked at Colgate-Palmolive or I worked at Murphy Phoenix Company, let me tell you what happened. This is a guy that had $10 in his pocket. For the first week that I worked there, I didn't even know how much money I was going to be making. I was just glad that I had a job, and I slept in the parking lot in my car, and I ate crackers for the whole week that I was there because I didn't have money to spend on any food. Here's the neat thing about it. When I got my paycheck, Mr. Moss walked up to me and he said, hey, do you know how much money you're making? I said, no, I don't. And he said, yeah. He says, you're making pretty good money. I said, well, good. I'd figure out how much money I'm making when I get my first paycheck. Keep in mind, McDonald's was paying $1.90 an hour. I was making $9.75 an hour. That would be equivalent to about $40 an hour today. Now, I was upset because McDonald's had turned me down. But I turned around, and when I got my first paycheck, I went and found a few friends that I had, and I bought everybody dinner. I mean, I just bought so much food. It was incredible because I never had that much money in my life. But for the longest time, when I was working at Murphy Phoenix Company, which made Murphy's Oil Soap, I grew with the company. I was with them for 14 years, and by the time I left Murphy's and went into pastoring, I was the second highest paid person in the company, and I was in charge of the whole Eastern division of the United States for the chemical division. It all because Mr. Moss gave me a shot. He was a champion in my life. But here's what happened when I began to work at Murphy Phoenix Company. There was some maintenance guys that didn't like me, and I don't know why they didn't like me. And their names was Jack, Ted, and Ray. And every day their job was to make my job miserable. See, in a union shop, you're not allowed to do other people's jobs. And so if the machine would break down, or the soap machine that I was working on would break down, or a pump would break down, I'd have to call the maintenance guys. Guess who the maintenance guys were? Maintenance guys were Jack, Ted, and Ray. And they come up to me and they said, well, we could probably fix that pump, but that's probably going to cost us each a coffee before the day's out. So if you go buy us a coffee, we'll work on your machine for you. And I said, well, if I don't buy the coffee, he said, well, we're going to have to shut everything down. You'll have to stay over tonight to make sure your work gets done. Time after time after time after again, they just bullied me continuously. So even though Mr. Moss was there, Jack, Ted, and Ray came to make my life miserable. And even though I was an adult, and this happened all the way up to when I was in my late 20s, they were still bullying me every day. Now, I wouldn't let them bully me, but I ended up finding a way to cheat the system a little bit to where I could get my life to be normal. But every day I had to deal with Ted, Jack, and Ray. And the whole time I thought that was a high school thing. I shouldn't have to deal that when I'm an adult now. I shouldn't have to deal with those guys that's like that. But they were there because they were the enemies. They didn't want me to succeed in the job that I was doing. They wanted me to fail. Even though Mr. Moss had been a champion and set me up, they wanted me to fail. Let me say this again to you. Who will you believe? The ones that want you to fail, the ones that have done no good for you, or the ones that are trying to help and try to push you forward to understand that you're something different than what you think you are? There's Mr. Mosses in your life, and there will be a Mr. Moss in your life somewhere when you become an adult. But let me just move on a little bit from there. Then so I left Murphy's, and I started to pastor a church. And as I started to pastor a church, we had burned up all of our savings, sold most of our cars, and the church couldn't afford us, and we were really low as far as making money. We weren't making a lot of money. We never did without, but we didn't make a lot of money. I mean, we were pretty poor as we were pastoring the church. And I remember that there was a time that we had burned up our savings account, and my wife looked at me and she said, "What are we going to do today?" Because we had a bill that was due, like $270 some dollars and some odd cents. And I remember praying about it, and I said, "God, I know that you put me here, and you're going to have to take care of this." She goes, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to go out and I'm going to cut grass." So I went out to the church and I started cutting grass. And about 10:30, this green car pulls up, and there's a man inside the green car, and his name is Mike Stupka. Now, just for your information, I haven't talked to Mike Stupka for 20 plus years until today. I talked to him on the phone today. He's like 70-some years old. I've been searching for him for like 2 months. And the reason why I want to talk to him is because I wanted to tell him that he was a champion in my life. Because Mr. Mike Stupka showed up one day, and he said that God had laid upon his heart that he was supposed to find a guy that was cutting grass on this particular street. And he was on his way to work. And when he pulled in, he said, "I'm here because I was supposed to stop to the person I saw cutting grass. And I'm supposed to tell you that you'll never have to beg for bread. God's got you covered." And he said, "Here, I'm supposed to give you this." And he had the exact amount of the bill that was due to the penny in the envelope. And he said, "I want to hand this to you." It's crazy. You got that right. That's how God took care of me, okay? It's just, and I'm not making this up. Nobody would believe me if I would make it up. It's true. I'd be fearful to lie about this. But he handed me the exact amount that was there, and he said, "I'm supposed to tell you that you're never going to beg for bread." For about 3 or 4 years, Mike attended the church and supported our family. He gave us money to go on vacation. He was always there. He was my champion at the time that he was there. Because, see, God knew that there was going to be some individuals that was going to come against me and didn't want me to be successful. I'm not going to name them. We're just going to call them the family. There was a couple families in the church that all they wanted to do was they wanted to just stay in their little realm of their box. They didn't want anything to change. And I became a threat. They really didn't dislike me. They disliked what I wanted to do. I wanted to expand. I wanted to work the vision. I wanted to go forward. I wanted to help more people. I wanted to touch young people. And what happened, even though Mr. Mike Stupka was there, then the family or the couple families showed up, and they began to make my life miserable. Every day they would lie on me. They would tell stories on me. They would exaggerate. Now, in their mind, I think they were hearing something different. I don't know why they turned on me, and I don't have any animosity against them, but all I know is that they did not like the direction that I was going to go because I felt like I was mandated by God to go do something, which, by the way, brings us here today on what we're doing. Because my whole focus back then was I wanted to reach young people. I wanted to help young people is what I wanted to do. But they were a real problem for me. They were, I consider to be the haters in my life. So after all this went by and we began to talk about residential treatment centers, then there was another champion that came in my life. And his name was Mr. Jerry Murphy. Now you got to understand something. Mr. Murphy owned Murphy Phoenix Company. He was the son of the owner of where I went to make soap for those 14 years. And I remember going to his office and telling him how I wanted to do this thing for youth, and I wanted to help youth. And he turned around and he said, "Well, put a price tag on it." And I began to kind of run out and throw some money out to him and say, "This is what I think it's going to cost." And he coached me a little bit in business. And then one day, he cut me a check for $1,000. And he says, go do what you need to do with youth. He was the first one that ever gave me money to help me start reaching youth in our neighborhood. I talked to Jerry a year ago. I went to Cleveland and met him. And he was like, and he's a millionaire. He's a multimillionaire. And he says, can I give money to help with what's going on in the kids? And I said, no, I'm not here for money. I'm here to tell you that you've been a champion in my life. And I want to show you what your $1,000 did, how it brought us and where we're at today. And I just packed him on it back and told him how important it was to be a champion. But in the midst of that, we had another enemy that came up on us, and we're just going to call them V and T, because I'm not going to use their name. But we had a group of people that came in, and they wanted what I had. They wanted what I had. They didn't want me to be successful, and they actually tried to steal it from me in a roundabout way. They became my number one enemy at that time. I was probably in my 40s now at that time. Now, keep in mind, all right, I'm 40 years old. I still got champions in my life, and I still got haters in my life. One day, I realized something was going to change. I had to make my mind up, who was I going to believe? Was I going to believe that they telling me that I'm all this bad person and that I'm no good because they were selfish in what they wanted to do? Or were I going to start looking at the champions in my life? So I started to just look at things differently, and I began to ask the question, how does God look at me? What does the Bible say about who I am? Okay? We gave a handout out a couple weeks ago. It talks about you saw that handout. Hopefully some of you have read them, okay? It's there. But I came to a conclusion that I had to understand something, that my life could not be full of me focusing on all of the champions in my life while I'm still focusing on all the haters. So what do you think I decided to do? This side. How many thinks I decided to think on this side? Let me ask you a question. Did it make the haters go away? They're still there. They're just not going to get my attention. They're not worth anything to me. They're not going to get the attention that they desire because they're selfish, because they wanted something for themselves. And if we'll be honest with ourselves, you'll understand something, that you're no different than I am. You're no different than I am. If you'll be honest with yourself and begin to identify who the haters were, you have to ask yourself the question, who are you listening to more? Who do you believe? Do you believe the haters, or are you going to believe the champions in your life? Are you going to believe the ones? And listen, it's hard. I'm not going to lie to you. It's hard, especially as an adult, it's hard. It's hard to not let all these people that want to say bad things about you and lie about you and tell lies on you and want to tear you down because all they want to do is rejoice when you fail. And listen, they saw me fail because I'm not perfect. I made a lot of mistakes. But I chose to come and listen to these people that are there in my life. Let me go through it real quick. Brenda Burt. Weird. Hadn't talked to her in a few years. Someone got a hold of me last week. Just show you how it's kind of weird, ain't it? Someone got a hold of me last week and said, hey, I was talking to Brenda Burt. I've never met this woman in my life. She texted me on Facebook and she said, could we talk a little bit? I talked with someone that I think you know is Brenda Burt. This was after last week's message. And Brenda said that you're doing a neat thing and that you could possibly help me do something for youth in the city that I'm working in. Kind of weird, ain't it? I told you about Mike Stuka. I told you about Mr. Moss. I told you about Jerry, Mr. Brown. These are key people that I decided that I'm going to focus on them more than who? Who's there? Are they there anymore? Am I going to pay attention to them? Will they still try to get my attention? Yep. Where do I got to put them? Got to throw them away. I can't pay attention to them. Understand? Now, we have to understand something, that as we go through this, we have to ask the question who we will believe. And as I shared with you, there was a time in my life that I had to choose. Was I going to listen to the haters or was I going to listen to the champions? And by the way, there's still more champions because I could probably put 60 names on there right now. I don't have 60 haters. I got more champions than I've got haters. But if I'm not careful and I started putting the attention towards the haters, it would block out all the champions in my life. I wouldn't be able to pay attention to them. So I decided to look for them. You got champions that work here right now, every day, that are here for a reason to help you be successful. You got those champions here. You might not know it today, but 10 or 15, 20 years from now, you're going to look back and you're going to say, wow, this person said this to me and it really stuck with my heart. Or this person treated me right and it really stuck in my heart. You're going to see 20 years from now the champions that's been part of your life. Some of you have already seen the champions that's part of your life. But I decided to focus on what I thought was the truth of what the Bible told me of who I was and how God looked at me. Keep in mind, Uncle Bill was very important to me. Uncle Bill had died. Mr. Moss was very important to me. Never talked to Mr. Moss. Mike Skupka was very important to me, but until today, had never talked to him for years. All right? Jerry, I know where he's at. I'm going to reach out to him, talk to him in a week or two. Mr. Brown, haven't talked to Mr. Brown forever. Brenda Bird, haven't talked to her forever, but yet all of a sudden, her friend calls me this last week. So what I decided to do a long time ago was to listen and begin to identify and prove. I don't want you to believe what I say. I want you to prove what I say. I want you to put it into actions. I want to give you something that you'll try and say, you know what? Wow, that kind of works. But the Bible tells me this. The Bible tells me, just in Psalms 139, just one passage of Scripture, it says that God formed me. So that means that God's formed all of us. It says, number 2, that I'm fearfully, which means respectfully, and I'm wonderfully made. As I said a couple weeks ago, there's no one that's got the retina in your eye like you've got, and there's no one else that's ever been born, that will ever be born that doesn't have your DNA. You are not a mistake. He worked extremely hard to make you just the way you are. You don't need to look like anybody else, ladies. You need to just look like who you are. Gentlemen, you don't have to be anyone else but who you are. And when you begin to understand that, you'll be able to become champions for other people. Because the end result is that God didn't make a mistake. He doesn't make a mistake. Do I like the double chin that I have? No. Do I like the fact that I got a gray beard and no gray hair on top? No. But it still makes me the fact that I'm wonderfully made. When I look in the mirror, you want to know how important you are? When we take a selfie, who's the first person we look at when we look at the selfie? We all look at ourselves. There's nothing wrong with that. We all do it. In fact, I've watched some of my closest friends and some of my family and say, oh, that's not a good picture. The reason why they said it wasn't a good picture, we want to do it again, because they don't like the way they look in the picture. All right? So we're interested in ourselves. So why can't we look in the mirror and let it reflect to the fact on how God looks at us when He says that He's formed us, that He made us wonderfully, and that the Bible tells us that we are not hidden from God. So a long time ago, when the haters were trying to take me down, I decided to listen and believe the champions. But most important, I decided to believe what the Word of God began to say about me. And this song will say it very clearly on who you are and how He thinks about you. Listen to it.
He formed my heart before even time began. My life was in His hand. He knows my name. He knows my every thought, and He sees each tear that falls, and hears me when I call. Let's all sing. I have a Father. I have a Father. He calls me His own. He'll never leave me, no matter where I go. Oh, all those tears that fall, and He'll hear you when you call.
As I begin to try to understand how God was my father, I had an image of my earthly father, which was not good. Because he left me when I was very young. The only time that he fought for me was after my mom had died. I had a very bad picture of my dad. He was never around, never nothing to do with me. I remember that when I turned 17, I was getting ready to move to Texas to live with my sister for a period of time because I just could not live with my grandmother anymore. That he wanted me to come to his house for 2 weeks. And so reluctantly I went. And no matter how hard we tried to connect, we could never connect. He couldn't talk to me, I couldn't talk to him, no matter what. He never really did anything bad to me, he was just never there. And so I understand the whole thing about how do we look at God our Father when we didn't have an earthly father to look at. And that was a difficult thing for me to understand. And so what I had to do was I had to begin to look at my earthly fathers as the people that were champions in my life. And how that they cared about me and that they wanted the best for me and that they would tell me the truth even if it would hurt me. They would be honest with me even if it upset me. They would tell me exactly the way I was behaving when I needed to be told that I was behaving wrongly. But they were the champions of my life. And I began to focus on the good that God had put around me and realize that that's really what God was, because the Bible tells us that whoever believes in Him shall not perish but have everlasting life. That means all we got to do is believe. And you might say, well, I don't believe in God. It's okay. He believes in you. He didn't make a mistake when He formed you. He didn't make a mistake when He put you on this earth. And I will tell you right now that there's a book that's being written and you're the author of the book. And it has your name on it and it says the author is you. And right now you might be on chapter 1, but you're writing your book with all the decisions that you make and all the choices that you're making. You're writing the book. And the end result is it's going to be off the fact of what are you going to do to make sure that book turns out the way it needs to be. My suggestion to you is don't take what I'm saying to you too light in heart. God loves you just like a father. The Bible proves it. It says this. In John chapter 15, it says that He's a friend of mine. When I didn't have any friends, when the haters were too strong in my life, and these people had disappeared, I had to concentrate on the belief that I was a friend with God and that God was my friend. Number 2, I had to understand in Galatians 4 that I'm a son of God, that He created me and that I am a son of God, that He looks at me like a father would look at a son. And I tell you, by having my own son, I would do anything for him. If he comes and asks me a question, or my daughter asks me a question, I will move heaven and hell to try to make sure that I can get them what they need. That's what a father does. My earthly father didn't do that to me. Maybe some of your earthly fathers have been the same as mine. The last one that I want to share with you when it talks about that is that the Bible says that we are children of God, that we're His children, that we look out for Him, and He looks out for us. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says this, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creature. The old has passed away, and behold, the new has come. It means that if we'll just, but Pastor Bob, every day, did you really believe that God was there? Nope, I didn't. I didn't believe God was there. There was times I was wondering, where were you at? I remember the time screaming when I didn't make it to McDonald's. I had my fist up. I was in front of the Cleveland airport. I still could take it to the spot today, and I was mad at God. I don't know what else you want me to do. You say you want to take care of me. I got $10 left. The car's empty, and I have no place to live, and I have nothing to eat. What are you doing, God? Not the whole time realizing that if I'd got the job at McDonald's, I would have never got the job at Murphy's making $9 more an hour. Sometimes it doesn't make sense on what's going on in our life. But I can truly tell you that if you'll let your champions and you start believing in what the champions are telling you, you will look back on and say, wow, that had to happen exactly that way for it to turn out to where I'm at today. Last but not least, I'm going to play another song before we're out of here, is Jeremiah 29:11. And he says this pretty much, that God has a plan for you. That His plans are for good, not evil. I'm going to touch on an area here in a little bit. It's going to touch all of us a little too hard, And I don't want to trigger anybody, but I need to deal with something, all right? And that he has a plan for a better future. You might say, where was God when the bad stuff happened to me? Everybody take a deep breath. Let it out. Where was God when the bad stuff was happening to me? Why would God let bad things happen to me? We deal with a world that has evil in it, and it has good in it. It has love, and it has hate. God never intended that the hate and the evil would overcome the good and the bad. I don't know why my mom died when I was 7. It didn't make any sense to me. I don't know why God would let that happen. But I know that down the road, when I'm looking back at it, I realize that I've learned so much because I was in the journey that I was put into. Maybe you have to go through certain pain because there's someone in your future that only you can help when you look at them and say, I know exactly what you're going through. I've watched close friends and family go through very hard times. People that's been diagnosed with cancer. People that's had bad things happen to them from someone that they thought that they could trust. And they ask me, why? Why, Pastor Bob, did this happen to me? And I'll look at them and say, I don't know why it happened to you, but I can tell you that if you'll learn off of this, and if you'll let something inside of you, instead of it turning to bitterness, turn it into something that's saying, I'm going to help someone down the road. Could it be that the reason why you have the pain that you have today is because you're going to be healed from that pain? You're going to understand that pain while you're at Safe House. That maybe one day, listen, you come back and you help someone else that has that pain? Could it be that you start your own residential one day to help teenagers that have gone through what you've gone through? Could it be that when you look over your life and you've made the right decisions and choice, and here's the thing about it, I can't make your choices. You got to make them. You're writing your book. What's the end of the chapter going to look like? Because right now you're on chapter that I'm in residential. That's the chapter that's being written right now. I'm in residential. How's that chapter going to finish? Is it going to finish, well, I didn't believe anybody that was doing anything good for me, and so I gave up on them and myself. And then the next chapter starts at, let me write a book about my next residential or the next thing that went bad for me. Or will it end with the fact these were the champions that were in my life, and I can turn the channel on residential, and now I can look towards the future, and the next chapter begins to talk about your future, because the Bible tells us, go back to that screen before that, Andy, the Bible tells us that the future, that God has plans for a better future. See, I believe that we're survivors. I believe that we have survived the things that's been brought to us in life and the things that will be brought to us later in life, that we're going to survive these things that's going on. And the reason why I want to upbeat a little bit with this next song, listen to it, and we're going to dismiss you. But I got something I want to give you out today. Last week, I think we showed the teddy bear story, didn't we? This week, I got a book for everybody that's here. This is a book that we wrote, and there's 2 stories to it. There's the teddy bear story that you saw on the video, and then on the other side, it's how if the teddy bear could talk through the position of what it was put in. And if you'll read it and understand, you might say, well, I don't know how to read that good. Get with your therapist and read a page or 2 a day. I don't care. No one needs to know what your reading ability is. But I'm going to give you one of these books, okay? Because I believe that if you'll go on the teddy bear side where the teddy bear's talking, it's going to make a lot of sense to who you are. It might even sound like you're talking when it's the teddy bear that's talking. So I said I was going to give everybody something. We're going to give you one of these. Next week, we're going to try to do some different things to kind of make some areas of this fun. But my challenge to you today is it's okay to identify your haters, and you need to do that. And it's okay to identify the champions. But it's not okay to let the haters direct you. And it's not okay for the haters to determine how your chapter of your book's being written. See, I'm probably like on chapter 15 of my book. But I still got to wake up tomorrow morning and make the right choices. Everybody with me? This making sense to you? We're going to shift a little bit starting next week is what we're going to do. I'm going to get away from the champions and the haters, but we're going to move a little further. Everybody okay with what we're doing so far? All right. Who's going to set your identity of who you are? Your haters or your champions? And every day, and you might sit there and say, champions, champions, champions. But when things get hard, if you're not careful, if you don't use self-discipline, listen, I can't change you, and we don't want to change you. We want to help. That's all we want to do. And there's not one person that's in residential right now that I want to keep in residential. My goal every time that I sit down with meetings with my folks that work for me is how do we get them out of here? How do we get them to where they need to go? What's the best move for them? When they come to me and say, well, they did this and they did that, I'm like, man, that was a bonehead choice. Okay, what do we need to do to help? But it comes down to this, ladies and gentlemen, and listen to me very carefully. This comes from my heart, deep within my heart. Only you can change. I've got the best of the best people around you to help you walk through that path. But it's going to be up to you whether or not you're going to. So let's start a new chapter. Whatever we decided that we were going to do, let's start today. Here's the challenge. Let's start a new chapter. Let's start looking at yourself a little differently than you've looked at it before. Let's quit letting the haters decide who you are. And start looking at the champions and let them start helping you. Okay? We'll pray for you real quick before we leave. Father, I just pray that you let this word go out and not return void. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.